Morning, everybody. How you doing today? Back inside for the show. Wanted to talk about an interesting issue that popped up here in Canada. So yesterday, the CBC covered a data breach. The Ontario Cannabis Store, which is the official government online store for selling legalized cannabis here in Canada, is reporting a data privacy breach. About 4,500 of the initial 200,000 orders had their shipping information breached at Canada Post. Now, Canada Post is our mail service, and it's the official delivery service for the OCS, because Canada Post will do the age verification at the door, so that aligns, and government supporting another government branch, blah, 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 right? Or at least Crown Corporation. It's a blurry line. So the interesting thing about this data breach, though, and good on the OCS for coming out and advising customers who were affected and listing exactly what information was and was not open. But the interesting thing was there was some finger pointing going on between the OCS and Canada Post. So it seems the technical details, what we can piece together based on based on the breach notification, based on CBC's reporting, based on me following up with the OCS with some questions, is this. Canada Post's business delivery tool had an issue in it where somebody was able to actually go in and query these 4,500 orders from OCS. So OCS put it in the system to ship it out, and to see where they were going, who signed for the delivery, all the delivery details. So basically what you'd see when you click in the tracking number. That's obviously a breach, and the OCS is informing the Privacy Commissioner. But they're also pointing the finger at Canada Post and saying, we decided, so OCS is saying that they decided to inform their customers, despite the fact that Canada Post decided not to inform its customers. So what we can infer from that is that Canada Post informed OCS, said based on the risk, they're not informing the other customers. But OCS took that extra step and said, we're going to talk to our downstream customers. The question is here, though, is were other business customers from Canada Post impacted? That's unknown at this point because Canada Post isn't referring that information. The really key point, and why I wanted to talk about this today on the show, is that OCS pointing the finger at Canada Post looks bad. No matter what happened, Canada Post is part of the OCS customer experience. It's part of that user experience from start to finish. You do business with OCS. OCS will then, you put it on their online store, which is hosted by Shopify, another service provider in their supply chain or their experience chain. Let's use that, the user experience chain. You put that in, they process, OCS has the stock and all that kind of stuff, and then they ship it out via Canada Post. As a customer, you don't care. You do not care who's under the hood. You think you're doing business with just one entity, OCS. And this mirrors every organization out there. We have multiple people involved in our supply chain, in our service chain, and our customers don't care, and they shouldn't care. And at no point should you be pointing fingers at somebody else, no matter how right you are, no matter how difficult it is to kind of swallow that. You need to come out and say, listen, we're working with that partner, because we're, evaluating the risk, we're going there, not pointing and saying, well, we think they should do this, but they're refusing, because your customer is trusting you. And because they trust you, they're trusting your choices. And if right out of the gate you're showing them that you've made an incorrect choice, unless it's been absolutely egregious and you're rethinking doing business with them, so you're saying, you know what, service provider A downstream had this massive and catastrophic thing, this goes against everything we researched about them, and therefore we're moving to service provider B, an event in the wake of this breach. Pointing fingers doesn't really help, because at the end of the day, the customer doesn't care. The customer cares that they did business with you. They're not going to call your supplier and work through things. They want to deal with you. So it's really interesting in that early on in the company's lifespan, in OCS's lifespan, they're dealing with a privacy breach. The communication was good and clear. They're dealing with the Privacy Commissioner. The only bad thing here is that sort of pointing finger swappy thing, because that never looks good. And I think that's something we all need to tackle, is our overall supply chain, the risk that presents to us, and then how do you manage that risk in the event of a privacy or a security breach? Do you mention that it's third parties to companies? How do you do that in a positive manner or in a manner that's accurate without throwing somebody under the bus? If you do throw them under the bus, did you mean to? What are the consequences of throwing someone under the bus? That kind of thing, right? Now, this is not the first time OCS has thrown Canada Post under the bus. They also blamed them for, because of this current labor issues at Canada Post, they were blaming them for delivery times. So there's not a great relationship right out of the gate between those two. From a business perspective, that's really interesting. From a customer perspective, I think that's interesting. When it comes to security and privacy, airing your dirty laundry is never a good sign, especially when you're trying to highlight how good your online security is and your overall security and treatment of information is. So interesting stuff. Let me know what you think. Hit me up online at markn.ca for those of you in the vlogs, in the comments down below as always, and by email, me at markn.ca for everybody, including our podcast listeners. I do read every comment I get. Whether or not I can get back to them is a question, because a great aspect of this is the audience is really interactive across a bunch of platforms. I know sometimes if you're looking on one platform, it doesn't seem like there's a big viewership, but when you see the aggregate, we are up to several hundred people watching this every day, which is amazing, and that's generating a ton of questions and feedback, so please keep it coming. I do read them all. I will get back to them all eventually, or answer you here on the show. Have a great day. I hope you're set up for a fantastic one. We will talk to you online, and we'll see you on the show tomorrow.